Hello everyone, this is Travis White with NewBlue, and we're here today to show NewBlue Titler Pro. And the application that we're going to be showing this in today is Premiere Pro CS 5.5. There are a number of editors that it will work in. However, today we're going to be showing in one editor, and let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we will open up Premiere Pro here, and I want to show how to put Titler Pro inside Premiere Pro. The first thing you do is you go to your bin, and you can either right click or you can do File New, and you go to New Item, drop down to NewBlue Titler Pro. Now what this is going to do is create an instance of Titler in your bin. It's not yet in your timeline. But let's just simply type some text. Now we could do more here, but I'm going to close this down and get it in the timeline so we have some good video preview. We'll open this up, and now you can see Titler Pro. Now you notice in Premiere, if we scrub the timeline, one moment. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and do some sizing and some rotation. So we can size it right here. And there's a couple different tools that you can use. You can use the rotation handle right here in the workspace. You can also use this handle, which we'll get to later. This is the XYZ rotation. But we'll just work with things right now. Now, NewBlue Titler Pro is unique titler. I mean, you would ask, like, why another titler in the market? There's plenty of titlers in the market, and they all do titling pretty well. In fact, you can get some really great results with a number of the titlers that are available. However, the majority of titlers have in common the fact that they're about as difficult to use or more difficult to use than the main NLE that is being that the title is being put in. And so this was one task that NewBlue just historically has been creating video effects that are aesthetically rich and also very accessible and quick to use. We wanted to take this same approach and bring it to titling. So I'm going to go into the library now, and this first title we're going to do just with presets. We're just going to work with presets. So the first thing you'd want to work with, of course, are style presets. So we can go to maybe a shadow. Here's a baseball style. So you can see as I hover over the different presets in the style category, I'm immediately getting a result of what it's going to look like. Let's go ahead and choose this 3D type. I'll double click, and now it's applied. There's a number of tabs here, and we'll get to these later when we do a custom workflow. I can go back to the library, and now we could do something like put in a transition. So if we go to the transitions category, we can do animations. We also have a starter pack of a number of video effects. We'll go ahead with the animations for now. And we'll bring in something like, let's say, fly in. Or, let's see. So if we hover over it, we can immediately see what the transition is going to be. Letters right. Spray letters. But we'll go ahead and do something like this one right here. Now let's go back to the library and pick something like fly past, or infinity, for example. Let's do a letter by letter, or word swoop. I can drag this down and not just put it in the beginning of the paragraph, but also put it at the end. If we scrub over this, you'll see what's happening here. So let's go ahead and play this. And now the title holds. And finally we have our animation out. You'll notice something here that we have at the bottom, this long blue bar. This is what we call our paragraph. And this is where you put your text, of course, and you can have carriage returns and a variety of text in here. You could do even something like a credit roll in the end, in fact. But this is the main object that the titles get put into. Alright, so now let's go back to the library. Like I said, in this particular example, we're just going to use presets so you can see how fast this thing works. We're going to go into the effects category. There's a number of animation effects, such as maybe pan. Hard to see when the transitions are moving, so let's go to our starter pack and do something like film camera. Again, as I hover over these presets, you immediately see the result. Let's go ahead and pick hand camera. We can scrub the timeline to see what's happening. And let's go back to the library and apply another one. Let's say, what do we want to do? Lens correction, for example. So how about, let's see, TV in space. So if I go ahead and play this animation, you'll see we've got a lens correction going on, we've got kind of this shaky camera happening, we've got an animation in and an animation out. In fact, if we go ahead and close this down, we can see on the Premiere timeline that you have this right over your video. Now, I just made a title with a number of presets, but you don't even have to go to all the different components. You don't have to do the transitions and the effects. You can actually go right into our templates category and simply hover over a complete template, and it takes the text that you want and brings in animations, it brings in transitions, it brings in effects, and everything that's going on. I'll just hover over a couple of these so you see what's going on. Let's say blue plasma. We'll go ahead and click that. Now, even though it's brought in 2 transitions in the beginning, 2 transitions at the end, let me bring this up a bit, and 2 animations, or 2 effects, excuse me, I can even size and position this whole paragraph just to where I want it to be. And now go ahead and play this. And you see how this rich animation is happening right over my video. Well, now let's go into a brand new project, and I'll show you how to build some of these things from scratch, and we'll get a little bit more of a view of the entire interface. Let's do File, New. Actually, let's just create a whole new instance of the title. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is, again, type some text. So let's say Speedway. Now I'll size this up a little bit. And change the font. We have another number of tools as well: bold, italicize, underline, all the typical layout tools that you would expect in an application like this. But something that you might not expect is the ability to size individual characters. You do something like this and position those characters in a very interesting way. So now you see, as I'm taking these individual characters, I'm creating a bit of a logo out of this text. There you go. In fact, you've seen the scale and the sizing. Now let's go into this other tool that's on the layout, and it's called the XYZ rotation handle. Simply click this button on your preview, and you get this sphere around your text. Now this, you can think of this as a globe, and you can think of wherever you take your mouse, you're actually grabbing a surface of a globe and spinning it around. For example, if I click somewhere near the edge, I'm going to do some kind of Z rotation here. If I pull it across, I'm going to start a Y rotation. If I pull from the top down, we have an X rotation. And I can do all three at the same time. And you see how this works. Now, it's kind of interesting with 2D text in a 3D space. This is also a very popular kind of look where you don't necessarily have extrusion or necessarily have 3D text. You might have a 2D style or a 2D look, but still bringing it in 3D planes, and that's something that Titler Pro does very well. Now, it's just white text right now. Let's go ahead and bring in some style. So we're in the Attributes tab, and we have 4 sub-tabs under the Attributes. There's Object, which you see is your position, your rotation, your scale, some other parameters. You have Style, you have Effects, and you have Transitions. Now, of course, something will be here if you've applied it. So we're going to go to the Style category, which you always have a style. And styles are made of style layers. Right now, we have one style layer. It's called a 3D face, and it's simply white, a white color. So let's go into making a gradient, and I'll just do something like bringing down to some kind of gray here and move that gradient around a bit. So now you can see there's a gradient on each of my characters. Now I can also stretch this across the entire paragraph simply by checking Stretch to Paragraph. So it depends on what you're going for. Notice we have a white at the upper left and we have a gray at the lower right. But I'm going to keep it individual characters for now. And there's a couple other attributes down here. There's extrusion, which we'll get to in a moment. Opacity, how clear this particular layer is. Offset X and Y. This is important when you have multiple layers interacting with each other, whether you want to offset them. Layer depth, you'll start to see this play out when we bring in more layers, bringing it forward or bringing it back. And a width, which is somewhat of a, I guess it's an overglorified bold control. And it's very, very effective, especially when using outlines to fill gaps, to create gaps, and those kinds of things. So the next thing we want to do here is just go ahead and bring in another layer, and I'm going to do a 3D outline. So instantly see we have some extrusion happening here with the outline. What we want to do here is, let's say, bring in a different texture. You've seen how color and gradient works. Let's go into bringing in a texture. Now you have any texture you can bring in, JPEGs, PNGs, a number of files. I love PNGs because they're able to bring in alpha transparency. So here's an alpha transparency. In fact, if I spin this, you can see how that's working. But what's really interesting about textures is you can also do environment mapping. If I go ahead and check environment map, you see how there's a reflection as if it was metallic. You can get some very interesting looks happening that way. Let's go ahead and bring up the thickness. And we'll go ahead and start getting in some other styles here. Let's go ahead and bring in another outline. And what we want to do here is maybe do simply another texture. We'll do another texture here. bring up some thickness. And we can look in the side and see where it's placed. This is where the layer depth really works. So you can bring this up and make some very interesting looks simply with this. And then the thickness will bold this up a bit. And finally, I want to do some environment map on that as well. Premiere is automatically saving here. Alright, we want to do an environment map. And lastly, to just really kick this thing off, we're going to do a white outline. So let's just do white. And this one I don't want to have 3D, so the extrusion I'll just take to 0. But I do want to bring it up, forward. And here's that width I was talking about. You can really size this to where you want it to be. There we go. Now, some things we want to do with this is, of course, put on some animation. So let's go back to the library, and we'll go into effects, number of effects, but in the animations category we have some simple things like turn. So let's put on a slow turn and see what this looks like. In fact, I notice on my style my white outline is showing forward a little bit. Let me bring that back. There we go. And so now we have this simple turn. I could have keyframed this, but instead I just threw on an animation and it works great that way. Let's go ahead and put in some transitions as well. So let's say a fly-in transition. Maybe fast left or a fast right. Let's pick the fast right here. So you see how that comes in. Now let's say I want a little bit more going on, and remember how we made individual manipulation of individual characters? Watch this. I can do the XYZ rotation as well. Let's see. To a subset of characters. So we could even turn this like this, and now you see, as the whole thing turns, we have some very interesting things going on. Now, the face of this piece of text is really not contrasting as much as I'd like it to. So let's go back into Style, and let's go to a texture. And we'll bring in a darker texture. It's kind of got a nice metallic look to it. Oh, look at that. I did it to an individual character. You can see that individual characters within a paragraph can have their own style, so you can really get creative with that. But I'm going to go ahead and do it to the whole piece of text. One moment. Okay. Now another thing you can do is bring in different layers and have transparency. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in another face, and I'm going to bring it forward. Put a bit of a gradient on it. This is great for doing sheens or kind of metallic kind of looks. I'm going to go pretty dark on this one. And bring down the transparency. So now you have this great look right over your main texture. There you go. And finally, we're going to augment this style, or this whole design right here, by bringing in another element. So let me go ahead and size this guy up a bit. And we want to go in, well, I'll just leave it right there because we're running out of time. I was going to bring in another element from our templates, but earlier I showed you how to use templates. So right now, we're going to go to a couple questions. And Ariana, our marketing person, is going to bring a couple questions in, as well as I invite you all to share a couple questions that you might have. Okay, we have a question coming in about what about credit rolls and layouts? Well, that's a very powerful feature of Titler Pro. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just do a new project here. And let's pretend that this is a credit roll. So I'm going to put a tab in between these and do something like my name, Travis White, tab, product manager, if I can type. You can also simply copy and paste texts from a document. Now, if we go into the attributes and the object tab, you'll notice that this paragraph has some elements called justify, tab width, and of course keyframing, which we didn't get into today. So I could justify left, justify right, justify center, and that center trough I can create a distance as I want. So now anything that has a tab in it will be centered along that trough, and then simply going into the library and choosing an animation, for example a pan, up to down, side to side, will get you a very nice credit roll. Another question: is it CUDA accelerated? At the moment, Titler Pro is not CUDA accelerated, but that's something that we're definitely looking at, and particular NLEs will really benefit from that as well. Although, just in a more general sense, it is 100% GPU. So it works with the NVIDIAs and the ATIs and all those just from a straight GPU perspective with OpenGL. Actually, another thing that's important to note within Titler Pro, talking about GPU, is that in our library you'll notice there's this add-on section. You can think of Titler as actually another host for the variety of NewBlue video effects that are available. We're about to come out with NewBlue video effects 3.0, and what that means is that all of the NewBlue effects will be now converted over and be able to be used in GPU. Once that happens, those effects will be able to be plugged directly into Titler. So when you buy something like motion blends or motion effects, you have motion effects right here, and any of you who are familiar with NewBlue's products would probably understand or probably remember this product. Not only can you use it in your NLE directly, like in the Premiere timeline or the various editors, you can also use it directly in Titler. And you see how we apply the different effects to the paragraphs. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Okay, another question of what titlers will, what video editors will Titler Pro work in? Well, our plans are virtually all of them, and if anyone's familiar with NewBlue, a real strength of the NewBlue company is the amount of support that we have for the various editors out there. So right now, Titler Pro works with Premiere, CS5, as well as CS4. It works with Vegas Pro 11, 10, even 9. It works with Media Composer 5, and working on Media Composer 6 right now. And it also works on Edius, Grass Valley Edius 6, and the whole variety. Now on the Mac platform, of course, you have Premiere, you have Media Composer, and Final Cut Pro. Mac is not yet available, but within the first quarter of next year, we're going to get a Mac version out of Titler Pro, and we'll be able to use those platforms. Question about price. The retail price of Titler Pro is $299, but we have a special deal going on right now in which you can get a couple plugins for free during the purchase time. So the availability, just another question about availability here coming in. Again, Titler Pro is available right now for Vegas and Premiere. Within the next week or so, it's going to be available for Edius. It's already available for Media Composer 5. Within the next quarter, it will be available for Media Composer 6 as well. And also in the first quarter of next year, we're going to be rolling out the Mac platforms, which would be Premiere, Media Composer, and Final Cut Pro. Just going to check right here if there's any other questions. Okay, we have a question coming in about how would you do lower thirds inside Titler Pro? Well, this is something that brings in an element that we didn't have time to get to today, but I'll spend a little time on it, and that is the ability to use shapes. So let's go ahead and I'll use my name. Go ahead into our handy styles. Grab something simple. And now we want to add a shape. So let's click off that particular paragraph and bring in a rectangle. Now the rectangles or squares, now notice I'm overlapping here. Let's get a style on that first. So let's go back to our styles and we could pick this. That works. Notice those styles are for text, but you can also use them for shapes. Now, the shape is covering the text because we have a layering on the timeline. Simply dragging on the timeline will change that layering. And in fact, I can go into the style and let's say this face, do something different with the texture. Let's see. And maybe this texture as well. There we go. And there you have lower thirds. You can animate every piece of that you want. You can bring in circles. You can also import images, like File, Import Image. This is essentially the same thing as putting a texture on an object, but this is really handy for various images that you want to bring in. Sunset and Capri. We'll just try that. There we go. And of course, you can manipulate it in 3D space like any other element. Okay, we have a question coming in about Final Cut Pro and Final Cut Pro Express. So Final Cut Pro, we plan to have a titler available for that within the first quarter of next year. Final Cut Pro X is a very different platform. It's being developed. We're currently evaluating the different SDKs and accessibility into that, but we don't yet have an availability for Final Cut Pro Express, or excuse me, Final Cut Pro X. Okay. All right, thank you all for attending. I hope this whetted your appetite with NewBlue Final Cut Pro. Please contact us with any further questions that you may have, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Thanks so much, and have a great day.